I still would. I don't know why I would, but I would. Like, I'm in radio now.
I
Like,
was gonna say, do you view internet radio as being all that? Because I mean, to your point
it's
about like
different.
everything evolving, I mean, like people were worried about like radio dying or rock dying, and I mean, hey, I love rock, so I'm kind of worried about rock dying, especially because I see fewer and fewer rock bands out there. But the point is, there are a lot of pockets, and all you have to do is throw a rock in any city, and you'll find a rock band or a hip hop
Oh,
group, or all you have to do is look for it, and you'll find it, right? But I
dude,
think
it's
the point is like everything evolves. So like maybe there are fewer people listening to what you'd call terrestrial radio, but maybe those radio stations or those channels or whatever it is are now moving to internet based instead. So radio isn't necessarily going to die, and rock isn't necessarily going to die. It might get incorporated into other stuff,
right.
or it might take on a new form, but nothing ever really dies. It just kind of evolves into the next thing, like a Pokemon or something.
Right, exactly. You can have the argument about somebody saying like, well, it's not pure anymore, and
Yeah, but those people
like,
are just assholes,
right, they are,
really.
and they're just like, it's never going to come back. It's one of those things where it's gone, and it was great that we had it at the time, and the fact that we got to be a part of it was amazing. But when
Yeah.
I look back at the time that I got to be in terrestrial radio, it was awesome. I would still go back just because of, a multitude of other reasons of why I would. And I don't want to, bore you guys with all those. But, the internet radio thing, I think is the best of both worlds. Like working at indie has been so great for me in so many different ways because one, it's opened me up to a whole bunch of different new music. Like I wasn't a big classic rock guy when I was working at WZLX. It wasn't like I was a big classic rock fan. I was more of a humor guy. So like, I liked all sorts of different types of music. Yeah, I love classic rock, parts of it, but other parts I fucking hate. Like I'm not gonna fucking sit here and pretend like I like Ted fucking Nugent. Like I'm not gonna do it. Like and Meatloaf can suck my pie, but the the
Thank you. Somebody finally fucking said it. Thank you.
Jesus Christ. I'll tell you a funny fucking story about Meatloaf in a minute because I played. What what's that video where he was the vampire?
I would do anything for love,
Yeah, it's that
but
one.
I won't
Yeah,
do that.
have you seen that one lately? Holy shit!
Oh God.
No.
You want to talk about something that did not age well? Let me tell you. Not only with the whole like sexual capture thing going on, okay, with an extremely young female who might be suffering head trauma. All right, and we don't know how she got it, but just the entire aesthetic of the whole fucking thing. Oh, I showed it to a high school class, and they basically said, "You can't show this to anyone else." Like, why? They're like, "You'll be arrested."
Like, Mr. Moriarty, why are you doing this to us?
It was so offensive. It was so bad. Oh, the thing is, it's up on YouTube. Like anybody's like, "Oh yeah, remember that?" You can go watch it, and you're just like, it's so
Yeah, like you just go
horrifying.
back, watch old videos and shit, and you're like, man, how did this pass? Like even old wrestling,
Oh,
like some of the jokes they throw out, maybe in commentary or something, you're like, oh my god, if they said that now,
Oh,
dude,
yeah.
look at fucking
holy
Attitude
shit.
Era. Think about like
Yeah.
during the Rumble when they like if you guys watched the Rumble this year and they brought out Lawler, it's like the fuck are you bringing him out for? Like
Yeah.
within and he's sitting there and he's talking and I realize he's at the table at the commentary table with one of the female wrestlers who has gone through trauma before, like in a workplace situation, and Lawler's over there cracking jokes about puppies. And you're like,
Jesus.
Yeah, like,
and he's making those like creepy old man comments, which worked for him in the Attitude Era. Sure, okay, yes,
yeah.
okay, fine. There's no place for that shit now. Why is Vince running
No.
him out there? Okay, because there's nothing that's gonna be good that comes out of it. I mean, it was cringeworthy already, all right, but just that feeling of going back and having to bring Lawler back in. Now, as somebody, you guys all grew up with Lawler, I assume, right?
Yeah.
I
Like,
grew up pre-Lawler.
you did? Yeah. So, okay. So
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
okay, I was like a Heenan guy. Okay,
Yeah,
so
me too, me too. Heenan and Gorilla.
Heenan Gorilla, like and then I followed Heenan over to WCW, and he's always been like my favorite guy. But at least on a mic. But
Mm.
there's plenty of other good ones. Like with them. Okay, if me and you are Heenan guys, right? And Andrew, what would you classify yourself as?
As far as like commentary teams, like when I was growing
Yeah,
up, for me
yeah.
it was Lawler, JR, and Vince.
Right. Okay. That's I'm like on the cusp there. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm right in the middle. And that's like when I watched like full time, like all that other stuff. Like if you want to make a parallel to how music is now, all right?
Yeah.
If we are Heenan guys, okay, like it's the same way. Like think
Mhm.
about how much it changed from them to them, and it was quick, but it happened, and then things happened and things happened and things happened to the point where Lawler is now pretty much radioactive. You can't touch him.
Yeah.
Okay, but he
Yeah.
was golden age WWE, Attitude Era. Like you can't imagine Attitude Era working without Lawler. It doesn't
Very
get
true.
anywhere. It does not get anywhere near as loud. But Lawler doesn't make it if Heenan doesn't make it, right?
Mhm.
Right.
So the color guy wasn't always, the color guy the way that those guys were. They weren't allowed to be that colorful. They're always just, side two. Think when Vince was doing it by himself, right? Who
Yeah.
was his number two? Do you even remember?
No.
Jesse, for the most part.
Yeah, Jesse. And was Jesse allowed to be Jesse? Not until
Not
later.
really.
Not
Not
until
really.
later. See what I'm saying?
He would always go to his tail of the tape. All right, here's the tail of the tape on
Right.
Andre. Like, oh, Jesus Christ, Jesse.
Yeah, it like looks like Howard Cosell like type of shit. And
Yeah,
that's what
yeah. Well, they
that's-
handled it more like sports back then.
right. That's the thing.
It
Is
was
like
a little more like, yeah.
they had to make that correlation. And now we're coming back to it where everything's being put up on ESPN under combat sports, where we have MMA and WWE, which couldn't be farther from apart. Okay?
Right.
Same way that you have Rock with, 21 Pilots, and then you're also in there with Bad Bunny, and you're also in there with, like, guys
Fun.
that. Yeah.
Like
But-
that band Fun.
Yeah.
I guess are kind of rock, even though they're more like,
They very
electronic
much are.
instrument.
They very much
Yeah.
are. That's like a very good rock band. Like you think about, and I can hear you, Andrew. I can hear you. Like I understand it, but there's that belief that like for those of us like there can only be one rock band and it's Sabbath. Like like yeah, I get that. I know that you're into that, but people can like other shit. It's fine. Like I used to give people all sorts of shit for the music they like, and that's not fucking great. I think that like now that everybody's more accepting of shit like that, and the more we get over our fucking selves with gatekeeping and bullshit in every facet of our lives, but with podcasting, I think that's a really good example of it. Is that people can get out and say the shit that they want to say and have the conversations that they want to have, as long as they're not hurting anybody. I think you're fine. Like, I think that there's that level of creativity and things can be about podcasts about fucking Mensa and be hysterical and then they can have the serious true crime shit over here. Like it's a big fucking tent and everybody can fit in. And I think that's the thing is that like podcast is going to be huge for everybody. It already is. I mean, obviously I'm like an old dude, but the next thing we don't even fucking know. Like we might all be on fucking Instagram next year or like, Discord or whatever. And that's where it takes us. It's your ability to be malleable with it. Like Heenan was able to change with the times. Lawler wasn't.
Mhm.
And, they still drag him out there because the guy who's dragging him out there was the guy that predated both of them. Right? That's the guy who's been around and all of a sudden has credence in more ways than one because not only is that the only tape in his tape deck in his car, but that's all he believes is rock and roll. And he's still got the money, so he gets to make the rules. So Vince gets to trot out Jerry Lawler because he thinks that's what the kids want and the parents want when nobody fucking wants that. But he's Vince because he wants it. And that's why he ended out there. Rock music wants to pretend, and the guys that are running rock radio want you to pretend that, they are liberal leaning. They're just like you. Okay? The fans of the classic rock radio is all encompassing. The trend, it's huge, it's big. It's not. It's full of fucking gatekeeper guys wearing Oakley sunglasses driving around in pickup trucks.
Yep.
With goatees. Like, it's those guys who have a country rock station on as number 2 and sports number 3. Okay? On their presets. Classic rock's going to be 1, sure. But AAF, BCN, any kind of rock station is going to be down at the other end of the dial. This guy is specific about listening to his classic rock. Same way that we now have, hipster alternative or classic alternative. Like, that's all bullshit. Like, putting all the demographics in it, everybody, like, that's old people shit. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what Vince did. And unfortunately, those guys still have the money and are making the rules in radio, but they're showing their ass because they're not changing with the times like people like you guys are, where you're going out and you're doing
Interesting to
podcasts.
see, like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
It's going to be interesting to see though, like what happens when people like Vince McMahon and people who are in the power, who have the money and shit, like when those people start dying off, and as the next phase comes through, like what is that going to look like? Isn't that going to be interesting as hell?
Well, I think it's one of those things
It'll be refreshing.
It'll be refreshing, but it won't be on purpose. It's not going to be Triple H. Okay, it's not. What it is it's going to be somebody like Cody Rhodes showing up with AEW and teaming up with motherfuckers and bringing Johnny Moxley and Kenny Omega and letting them go. All right, and like saying, all right, yeah, we are going to have a fucking blood sport match. All right, and we're gonna rip ass with that and do a throwback that people actually might want to see. Where it's like, oh, that might be too offensive to some people. And they're like, yeah, we know it's going to be, but this is what we're leaning into. We're not trying to be everything to everybody. All right? Like, you can't do that because then you're nothing for nobody. So the way that they're going about it with, leaning into whatever their niche is. And Moxley and, Kenny, like those type of guys, if we're making the wrestling analogies, right? Those guys weren't going to be big stars. And you know who said that? It wasn't fucking Vince. Vince doesn't know who the fuck those two guys are. Triple H said that. All right?
Oh, really?
And we're all sitting here saying, oh, think about what Triple H said. Like, vanilla midgets. He's been saying that shit for 30 fucking years. Right?
Yeah.
And look at the guys that have come up that have tried to change the game. Brian, you got Brian, you got CM Punk, you got the guys that didn't want to play. All right? Yeah. The guys that wanted to do their own fucking thing. And I mean, Andrew, yeah, they got their corporate sell-up, okay, eventually because they had that much big of a bump. But imagine for all those guys, like the Damian Sandows, like the fucking Zack Ryders, like those guys that we thought were fucking amazing at one point, but they got stuffed. And then those guys we don't even fucking get to see on TV, right? Yeah. Now we get NXT, we get all this other stuff. Like, yeah, and Triple H is going to sit there and take credit for NXT fucking T. Like, yeah, okay. He might have been like the guy behind it at the beginning, but he's not the guy calling the shots now. He's the front. Like he's what Vince wants you to see. Okay, yeah. Triple H ain't ever going to be in charge. It's going to be the next guy who comes up and knocks Vince off by being Vince, but better. Okay, being today's Vince, not yesterday's Vince. Okay, or friends with Vince, or used to work for Vince. Like, yeah, that guy might be there and split off completely and, take off. But, like, you look at what Cody did with AEW. Everybody was like, you're fucking crazy. And it's like, dude, that's working. We're literally looking at that and going, okay, yeah, I watched that. And, like, I love me some, Orange Cassidy. I didn't think I would. I was like, I don't think I can get into this programming. Like, I just, like, it's AEW. It's not for me. Like, I didn't like ECW back when it was ECW. I didn't like, I didn't even really like WCW that much except for Heenan. And I was just like, I'll watch it when people are force me to watch it. Like fucking Kevin Nash and the Outsiders gimmick. All right?
Yeah.
I didn't care about Hogan turning. I was like, don't put Hogan on more. Like, I want to watch the guys coming up that don't get the respect. I want to see that turn. And we still haven't seen that turn. We get teased it all the time, but it's always done in that corporate way. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, this guy's fighting against the establishment or fighting against McMahon's, which they did for 20 fucking years.
Yeah.
Like, we realize that that's the corporate storyline. And they think they're being slick about it when they're not. We've seen that before. It's when it's actually genuine and it's actually happening against, and yeah, AEW's corporate too, of course, it's TNT, whatever. But, it's like JR's spoken out enough about WWE. You think about those guys that are never going to get back in WWE. It's a very good parallel for rock radio. It's podcasting and radio. It's just they went off on a different stream, and they were just like, fuck this bullshit. We don't have to be qualified by this. Yeah. We can go off and do our own fucking thing. And you look at the guys that are huge fucking podcasts now. And, like, some of our interns are way more successful than we ever were and get heard by millions of fucking people every week. Not you two, but
I agree. They're more successful.
Not even close. We get heard by like 2 people a week.
No, like we've got like you remember Jamie Loftus? Like she was in the New York Times this morning for her podcast, and she was a top 10 pick across the board in all the podcasts of the year last year. And she's doing a new one about, like, Lolita, which is fucking great. But this was a girl who was going to college and interned for us at ZLX and for our morning show. And we had her basically doing nothing, like like nothing of importance. But she came through, and she took that experience